All right, so the last thing we're going to talk about in this gear talk section is actually something that goes between your mixing console and your amplifier to your PA system. And that's a system processor or PA management system. So system processors are specifically designed to work with your PA system to help them work at their best. You see, PA speakers are usually designed in a pretty scientific and close quarter space where things are set to ideal circumstances. Your space isn't usually as ideal circumstance, so you need to help it out a little bit. System processors usually use things like EQs and crossovers. They'll have sometimes compression or limiters, and even they'll have little cool features like feedback rejection, where it'll actually suppress things down when it starts detecting feedback. So why do we use these? Well, the first main reason you're probably going to have one is because you need to help set what's called a crossover. A crossover does this. It says, hey, at this point in the frequency spectrum, stop sending it to the main speakers and send it to the subs. The reason why we do this is because if we're going to have a sub speaker system, then we need to have its own set of frequencies designated for it. Because usually subs are going to cover things from about 40 hertz to about 60, 80, maybe even as high as 100 hertz. We're only using those speakers for their super sub low frequencies. Main speakers, while they can go down as low as 60, maybe 80 hertz, usually they don't sound the best, and they actually tend to start covering up other frequencies because there's so much information coming out of them. So we split the job, but you got to help them out with that. They don't know how to do that on their own. So a crossover on a system processor handles that. Now you may also have things like compression and limiters on the systems where you can actually help it. So if things start to feel like they're taking off to the point where it's too loud or there's potential to damage the system, this will kind of help you as a safety net for it. So the best part about a system processor is if that you've grown out of the typical left-right sub setup and you've got, say, center fill speakers or some delay fill speakers, or maybe you want to start pumping your sound out into a lobby because you've got a speaker out there now. System processors are great because they can usually take those outputs and apply the correct amount of EQ and compression needed to make sure those sound and work well. On the higher end system processors, you may actually have multiple inputs, so you can have several different mixes to go to different outputs. Think of it kind of as like a routing center for all the things that need to go into a system processor, be processed, and then sent to where they need to go. So if you've got, say, a lobby speaker that needs a slightly different mix than what you're having in the room, you can have that set to go there, process it, and then send it out to that lobby speaker. And then lastly, you may also have networking capabilities where you can control everything from a laptop or a computer while the system processor is in another room, usually by the amplifiers. So would I recommend system processors? Absolutely. I think every system should have one. If you don't have one, that's okay. You can get by without it for now, but you should at least start looking at getting one for the main features of crossovers and EQ and filters, just to help maintain your system and get it sounding the best it can, because each speaker is designed to work in a certain scenario, but your scenario is probably different than that one. So you need to help it out by using these tools to make them sound the best they can in your space. Whew. All right, so that was a lot to get through, and I'm so glad that you made it all the way to this last video in this section. So in this next section, we're actually going to talk about digital and analog again, but we're going to go a little bit further than what we talked about previously. You see, I think it's important that we talk a little bit more about the heritage of analog, why it's so great, and how digital is kind of better now, and what some of the benefits of digital are. So let's go into that next section now and learn more about the analog versus digital world.